Okay, if you don't mind, we'd like to get started. So this is a meeting that we've set up. My name is Michael Markman. I'm the president of BET Investments. BET Investments stands for Bruce E. Toll. Bruce Toll is a resident of Abington. I am a resident of Abington. And this is a development that we're proposing. The purpose of this meeting is to kind of go over the development and get feedback from the people in this room and listen to what you have to say, and to the extent we can modify our plan or modify what we do, be responsive to what your questions and concerns are. Most of you got, when you came in, was a handout. The handout represents a comprehensive list of questions that were posed by an immediate neighborhood group. We've taken the opportunity to take those questions and answer each and every one of them. We've submitted it back to the neighborhood group via email, and then printed out copies here for everyone to review. So if you have any other questions based on that, it should answer a lot of the questions you have. If it doesn't, we're going to have plenty of time for kind of an interactive discussion. We want to hear what you have to say, and to the extent we can change our plan or listen and modify what we've done so far, we're going to be responsive to that to the best we can. With that, I just want to turn it over to Commissioner Sanchez. I think he wanted to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Markman, and I promise I will try to be very brief here so we can get right into things. I appreciate BET convening this meeting. I thank everyone in attendance, and I just want to clarify a few items right at the outset, so I thank you for that opportunity. First and foremost, I want to be crystal clear that this is a neighborhood informational meeting which was convened by BET so that they can present and discuss their proposal with the residents. This is not a meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Abington Township, nor is it in any way a formal or official meeting of Abington Township. No township action or votes will be taken tonight. Again, this is not a township meeting and will not culminate in any official action or votes. Before any future public meeting occurs, if it actually does occur, you will receive notice in accordance with law and likely above and beyond what is required by law. So in light of what I just said, you may be wondering why the commissioners are sitting up here on the dais. This is strictly for space considerations, as we're expecting high attendance, and it looks like we've got some. We're going to invite people if they want to use these chairs. I see there's some people standing around.
More chairs are coming.
I know the manager's getting some from the back room, I think. So, folks, please feel free, and you can join us up here. Next item, the township is videotaping this meeting for the benefit of anyone who was not able to attend in person. Note that this is being done at BET's expense, the same as all other costs incurred by the township for this evening are being appropriately reimbursed to the taxpayers by BET. I would request that we try to end this meeting no later than 10 o'clock p.m. this evening, out of respect for everyone's time. Accordingly, I understand the format will begin with a brief presentation by BET, then they'll immediately start to address resident questions or comments in an orderly fashion. As such, I think it makes sense for anyone wishing to speak to line up for and speak from the podium right here in front of Mr. Markman. It will also be helpful and much more productive if folks can try not to be overly duplicative in their comments and questions, but above all else, if we can maintain decorum and have a civilized exchange of ideas between the parties. If we end at 10 p.m. and there are folks who haven't had the opportunity to speak, or further discussion would be helpful, we've tentatively held the date of Monday, February 12th, that's February 12th at 7 p.m. in this same venue to provide additional meeting time. Moreover, folks can, as always, feel free to reach out to me or their own commissioner or both of us with any feedback or comments. All of the contact information for commissioners is available on the township website. Thank you, and with that, Mr. Markman, please.
Thank you. The proposed development is called Abington Terrace, and I'm going to just walk through some of the specifics about it. So right now, the parcel is currently zoned community service and R3 medium density residential. We propose to have a map change to apartment office district, which is actually the zoning that's currently Sunrise across the street. Right now, there's the YMCA on the site, and it includes the funeral home site and that funeral home, the building next to the funeral home site, between the YMCA and the funeral home site. We then are looking to, we're proposing a text amendment, which would allow an increase in density under AO for a 55 and older apartment unit under Fair Housing Act. The reason we're looking for the increase is for the reasons you'll see later. It's creates less traffic. It generally has less impact, the 55 and older, than a traditional apartment, and it doesn't produce any school children. The parcels are currently being used for conforming and non-conforming uses, which include the YMCA, the gym, the childcare, and the funeral home. So the proposed development, if the zoning is changed, we intend to develop the parcels for luxury one and bedroom, two bedroom apartments, similar to what we have at the Abington Terrace apartment complex in Upper Dublin, Pennsylvania. The average monthly rents would be in excess of $2,000. The way these developments work these days, these upscale apartment complexes, they almost feel like a resort hotel. They have amenities which generally include upscale gathering areas, resort-style pools, and fitness center. And generally, you'll have 10,000 square feet of amenities for the people to use. And it's kind of it's a different kind of living where you don't have to be responsible for anything except paying your rent. And we take care of the unit, we change your light bulbs, and it's a nice form for people, in their 70s, which we generally attract to these. The plan currently as it stands, and this is just a proposed plan, it was just to show something. It's not necessarily what we're married to, so we're here to listen to what people have to say. What we intended to do to start was pull it away as far as the 4 stories. The first story is just parking. So if you look underneath, the whole first story would be parking. In this area, we tried to pull away the 4-story part from, the neighborhood right here. So this would be a 1-story kind of parking, just really a covered parking lot, because generally if you want to do an upscale property, you like to have covered parking. On top of the parking area, we would just have heavy landscaping and potentially some seating areas. It would step back, and I'll show you later, but to a 3-story here and then go a 2-story here and then a 3-story and a 4-story at the furthest away. Inside the building, this is all on the first story as well. This would be a pool deck area, and we'll show a rendering that describes the pool deck area as well. This is 1 story as well. What we attempted to do was pull it more towards the road and have the 1-story portion next to the single-family residential next door. One of the questions posed are, what are the entrances and exits? On Old York Road, we were proposing a right-in, right-out in this location. We were then proposing another right-in, right-out in this location. We were proposing right-in, right-out in this location, and the only full kind of in and out left, right-in, right-out would be in this particular location, which would be lined up with the Sunrise driveway. So getting to the project rendering, so the 2 people that are here with me, to my right is Peter Cleland, who's our in-house civil engineer, and then Matt Johnson, who's our in-house architect. I think I want Matt to describe some of the architectural elements and what we were thinking when we put them together, because that was another question.
So the overall material, thanks. So the overall material palette was kind of pulled from what you see up and down the rest of Old York Road. If you're looking at the surrounding buildings, like look at the hospital, what you see is a lot of light-colored stone, you see a lot of brick. So we wanted to include those in our project. These are high-quality materials for multifamily residential construction. These days, when you look at a lot of newer apartment buildings, you see a lot of eaves, which is like a stucco-type material, and you also see a lot of siding, whether it's a high-quality vinyl siding or a hardy plank. Just for reference, the materials that we're proposing are about 3 to 5 times the cost of like the stucco-y type or the siding, typical materials you would see. Architecture, we also tried to stay a little more traditional, given the context. You see that with some of the stacking and with the cornices that run across the building. Facade breakdown. we wanted to avoid a large monolithic facade. We wanted to create some interest as you're walking down the street, as you're driving down the street. So we tried to break down the facade, and that's done with the variety of materials, again, with the ins and outs and sort of the ups and downs that you see. One thing that this rendering doesn't show particularly well is the landscaping, the streetscape that would occur kind of between the street and the building. Typically, when you have a 25-foot plus sidewalk area, what you get right next to the curb is you have your street trees and landscaping. And then you have about a 10-foot, 6 to 10-foot pedestrian sidewalk. And up against the building, you'd get more softscaping. That's where you have your shrubs and flowers and such. And none of that is shown in this rendering. But it would be our intention to provide landscaping along the street. That's all I had on these. So again, in these renderings, you just see how we're attempting to break down the facade, create some interest along the street. Again, with the ups and downs, the changes in material. You see a lot of the traditional cornices. Yeah, you can go to the next one. More of the same, again, the ups and downs, breaking down the facade. And what you have on the left-hand side is what Michael was referring to earlier, where it's sort of the one level covered parking with the landscaped area above it. And then when we get further away from the residential, which is that lighter portion of the building, is where we really start to increase the height a little bit. So the height doesn't really increase to anything more than a story for about 100 feet setback from any of the neighbors. This is the elevation along Old York Road. Again, you see the materials which are similar to what you see up and down the rest of Old York Road, and more the stepping of the facade to create interest along the street. This is the amenity deck. Like Michael was saying, these communities tend to feel like an upscale hotel. So this is where you have the nicer pool. There's an area for bocce. I mean, who knows if it's actually bocce, if it's another game. But these are just general communal spaces for the residents to use. Just another shot of the pool deck and amenities.
So going to kind of the interior features, generally with these, we're putting in kitchens so that you can have chefs come in and show people how to cook. We have, areas for people to eat, common areas for people to get together. So this is kind of a typical look for an interior amenity space. Another typical, that could be the lobby coming off of Susquehanna. Once again, you try to do a very upscale hotel type feel when you come to these projects, so people feel like they're living, in a resort basically. Outdoor areas, sometimes you have fire pits and outdoor seating, which can be pleasant if you want to sit and read a book. Yoga rooms, so in all our new developments, we're putting in a exercise room with cardio and weight equipment, and then we also have a separate yoga type room where we do fitness on demand so that people could do it on themselves, plus we have classes for people, especially in the 55 and older communities. So this is basically a tax revenue impact. We submitted a complete study, but this shows what the tax revenues would be for this type of, or this particular development if in fact it were built as shown. So if you look at the top, the total taxes generated for the Abington School District would be almost $723,000 a year. And this doesn't include anything during construction. This is a yearly tax payment that we would make if we built this. So right now the YMCA doesn't pay any taxes. It's a nonprofit. So it'd be $723,000. Because it's 55 and older under Fair Housing Act, it would produce $723,000 because there would be no school students for the school district. So just by way of example, and just because I live here, I'm concerned about our largest rateable, which is the Willow Grove Mall, and the potential devaluation of the mall. If you look at this development, that $723,000 is equal to the 20% of the current taxes paid by the Willow Grove Mall owner. So essentially, the Willow Grove Mall could go down in value by 20%, and this would make up for it. Abington Township taxes, and we submitted a study for this, Not as significant, but the taxes are being paid. Most of the services are us. The only thing, potentially if there's some police calls, but there's $187,000 in yearly taxes, less township costs of $62,000, which were in our study, for a net revenue of $125,000 a year to the township. So the total annual tax net revenue would be $850,000 for the township. Looking at traffic, which is always a big concern, this would be, 224 or 25 units as shown. What we did is we hired a traffic engineer. They went out and counted the trips that the Abington YMCA is currently generating. So these are actual trips on a daily count for the YMCA. It was 1,135 trips. This particular development will generate 774 trips per day. So there will be a net decrease off the property from what you see today of 361 trips. So what you do is you take all the trips that are there today, then you take all the trips that this will generate, and there's 361 trips. If you look at the numbers, they don't quite add up. If you look at weekday morning and weekday afternoon, these are peak hour. But the majority of the trips, it'd be, I think it's 356 less weekday peak hour trips. So literally people coming off the site, there'll be going in and going out, there'll be 360 less cars than currently come on and off the site today. And we own, and if anyone wants to come tell me, we own the Dublin Terrace apartments. I can tell you it's rare that I'll drive through there and there'll be another car even moving, because there's just not a lot of trips being generated from these 55 and older communities. Generally because the average age is about 75. So most of the people try to avoid any kind of peak hour trips. They don't want to go out during rush hour, and when they do go out, it's usually in the middle of the day. So these numbers are also consistent with what we generate from the Dublin Terrace apartment complex. And I'm happy if anybody wants a tour of it or wants to see, who's there or what it's about, I'm more than happy to meet anybody down there. So what I want to show you, these are our wild, raucous parties. We have community activities at Dublin Terrace. So as I said, our average age is 75. And the one thing I want to reiterate is 50% of the residents at Dublin Terrace are either from Upper Dublin or they have children in Upper Dublin. So what we're doing is when people, and our average age is 75, when people are moving out of their homes, and the trend today is everybody wants to live independently as long as possible. People do not want to take any kind of special care until they absolutely have to. So they're moving out of their homes, they're moving into our complex, and it's a social environment. They go to the clubhouse, we have events every week. People have come out of their shell. I mean, my wife actually works there teaching yoga and aerobics, and it's very well attended, and people really enjoy living there. I mean, it's actually changed people's lives because it's such a nice community, and these types of communities do. And I can tell you the average age is older because people stay in their houses, and then we usually capture them from maybe 75 to 84 as long as they're independent. The next trip is generally to assisted living, so it's not a bad location. Sunrise is across the street and Rydell Park is right there as well. The other aspect of 75-year-olds is they like to live near a hospital, and this is obviously close to Abington Hospital. Just another picture of an event. This particularly shows if someone brought their grandchild to the event. We serve a lot of food, have a lot of social activities, and this is kind of our average, resident that's there. This is our chair yoga class, which is very popular. It's very well attended, and it, brings people together and brings people out of their apartments. Just another picture of, that's the clubhouse at that particular location. What we've learned from this is we need bigger clubhouses because this clubhouse is not big enough for the people there. And there's a third picture, kind of gives you the nature of who lives in these types of developments. So that's basically, our presentation. The truth is the reason, and the reason that Bruce and I want to build this here, we live here and we want to build a signature, beautiful project in Abington. I mean, we have one in Upper Dublin. I can tell you, the one in Upper Dublin right now, we have a 40-person waiting list to get in there. So if you walk through the door today, the rents are, average probably $2,400 a month. You will have to wait till next summer to actually move into the complex. We're seeing people from Cheltenham, people from Abington going to Upper Dublin. My in-laws didn't want to go there. They went to the plaza, and, you know, they would probably more likely like to be in something like we would build. So we want to do a beautiful project in the community we live in. I drive by the site 20 times a week. I'm here, and, you know, Bruce feels the same way. So that's probably why the materials are much nicer than we would do anywhere else, and we want to build a beautiful project here. So I understand that, you know, people have concerns and change is always tough, but I'm more than happy to listen to what people have to say, and to the extent I can, incorporate their thoughts into what we're trying to do here. So I guess with that in mind, we can answer any questions. So if you want to just come up to the mic, and then someone can get behind you.
Thank you. I noticed that in the questionnaire, somebody asked about LEEDs rating, and you elected not to pursue a LEEDs rating. Could you explain your rationale for not doing that? Not that I'm demanding it, but
Right.
what's your rationale for deciding to do it or not do it? And if you're not going to do it, are you still going to incorporate certain things that would be in the LEEDs? Things such as a vegetative roof, gray water, permeable parking, permeable road surfaces, et cetera.
Okay, so, you know, we're actually, the Promenade at Upper Dublin, which is a project that we're working on right now, we got approvals for. You know, we were asked the same question, and, you know, we believe in sustainable features. The whole problem with LEED is you can pursue it, you don't know where you're going to end up. But as far as we're concerned, you know, we want to incorporate sustainable features, and we're willing to commit that, you know, in this process. So as far as all those things, I don't know, Pete, do you want to mention? Pete's our engineer.
Sure, yeah, we'll certainly have sustainable features in the design of it. LEED certification, whether you know or don't know, is a process after the project is completed to certify that those things were done, and you get award points for it. That doesn't make the project any better, it just gives you a piece of paper that says it was LEED certified. So to that end, yes, we will certainly have, I mean, the rooftop gardens that Michael was showing you in the rendering will be utilized as stormwater features. Gray water, you know, there certainly are uses for it in those types of rooftop gardens for irrigation and that sort of stuff. Other aspects, obviously, we're going to meet today's building energy codes, which in a lot of cases are the same as what you would have to do for LEED anyhow.
And then electric car charging stations are important, and we're definitely going to incorporate them into the project, and I think they're going to be more important over time. So what we're doing now is we're trying to create, if there's covered parking, access to more potential electric car charging stations in the future. The other thing which we've had to incorporate, more so for the market rate apartments, is the deliveries for the Amazon. I would say we get probably half the units get a delivery each day, so we have to incorporate 80 to 100 lockers in each of these developments. And the other thing we're incorporating is Uber lobbies, so that when people want to take Uber, they have a place to sit. When the Uber comes, they can jump in. Next.
Good evening. My name is Bill Schwarzschild, and I live at Rydell Park. And I'm concerned about the water runoff more than anything else. York and Susquehanna Road is at about 341 feet, give or take 5 feet. The base at the man-made waterfall in Rydell Park is 168 feet. The Meadowbrook Stream at the fairway is 149 feet, and all these were taken with GPS. This is a drop of about 192 feet. Niagara Falls drop is a mere 167 feet. 1 inch of rain in an acre is 27,000 plus gallons. And the weight of that water is 113 tons. Since we're dealing with a little over 4 acres, this equals 108,000 gallons and about 452 tons of water. And that source is the United States Weather Service. The average rainfall in Abington Township is approximately 4 inches a month over the last 10 years. If you build on the plan as I saw, and what I've just seen tonight, all this water will be runoff, not percolated through the soil. There is a lot of open space now on the properties, and when the building is constructed, there will be almost none. where is this water to go? If it's channeled into the stream, it will cause major erosion not only to the stream, Rydell Park, and the neighbors, but also to Susquehanna Road, which it crosses twice on the way down to the bottom of the hill. There are no real gutters along the very steep decline along Susquehanna Road. This will be very bad in a bad rainstorm, and we've had rain of 8 to 10 inches at a time in a day, or in freezing weather. And you're talking about 220 plus apartments, and I would expect to see more than 300 cars on the property because people are working at into an older age, and there's people at Rydell Park that still work. You've told me where they exit onto the street, but anything coming onto Susquehanna Avenue is only going to add to the congestion at the bottom of the hill. The bridge at Washington Lane and Susquehanna Avenue is a bottleneck, and I have waited 5 to 10 minutes just to come out of Rydell Park because the traffic's backed up all the way up the hill. And the same thing holds true at York Road. Trying to go west on York Road in a busy time is very hard. And you quote the 300 some cars moving, but that's an estimate. You don't really know how many cars will leave at any one time. And it's all the things I would love to do would be a traffic engineer and be able to say what's going to happen in the future. And they should be very wealthy because they know the stock market. So, you know, I'm just concerned about traffic, and I'm definitely concerned about the runoff of the water. And I don't know that you've thought about that enough because it's a huge amount of water.
So I can let Pete, who's a civil engineer, address the water. And you're right now we're looking at zoning. Generally, these are handled with land development, which we have a very high standard that we have to satisfy the township with, but go on.
Yeah, certainly all that water will have to be managed. We plan to do so with underground detention basins as well as the rooftop gardens that we were talking about before. As Michael said, we will have to fully comply with not only the township's requirements, but the erosion control requirements of Montgomery County and the Department of Environmental Protection, which will ensure that we don't increase the runoff, that we will, in fact, have to infiltrate it into the ground. That's part of the MPDS program today, is that you have to infiltrate the 2-year storm on the site. So we will have to meet those requirements. Certainly not going to question any of your numbers here. I've been Googling them a little bit while we sit here, and it does appear to be mathematically accurate. I will add, though, that as far as Niagara Falls, that reportedly produces 6 million gallons per minute over the falls. So I don't think we're anywhere near those kinds of volumes. So understood the height, but that also happens over a very short distance versus a half mile. So we will certainly have to meet all of those requirements that you're talking about.
And the other thing as far as traffic, and I understand, so our whole point, and we did a traffic study, and the traffic study also looked at the traffic exiting and entering our 192 units in Upper Dublin right now, and was consistent. So the traffic generated is 360 less trips, which is 180 cars roughly per day, mostly during peak hour, than is currently being generated from the site. So I'm not saying it's a great thing, but it's a lot less than the Y currently generates. And that's why the 55 and older, and I can tell you, the 55 and older age restriction that I'm looking for on this, I was called by several other, we're developing right now in Upper Dublin, we're doing apartments, we're doing them in Lower Moreland, we're doing them in Horsham, and Jenkintown is asking me to do apartments here. And in none of those situations did I volunteer the age restriction, but what the age restriction does is it protects your schools from additional students. And the second thing it does is it causes less traffic, so it's less impact. So in this particular case, I started with the age restriction without anybody asking. I can tell you the Lower Moreland Township manager called and got really upset. He said, why aren't you doing age restricted in Lower Moreland? And because, well, for obvious reasons, but your points are good ones and they have to be addressed. So.
I'm Jan Spiegel, and I don't live in the ward of where we're talking, but I'm still an Abington resident. I've gone in and out of Sunrise, and sometimes it can take 5 to 10 minutes just getting out of there because of all of the traffic on Susquehanna. So even though this development may not add much to the traffic, it's still going to be hard to get in and out of there. as well as, just the surroundings. So even though it may have 361 less trips, it's still going to be a nightmare, because it's a nightmare as it is, even when there's not a lot of traffic coming in and out of the YMCA. My other question that I do have is the amount of buffer green space between this development and the houses. How many feet of green space is that?
So I think the current
That's
setback
40.
is 40 feet.
40 feet?
Yeah.
So anywhere around where the houses are, it's always going to be 40 feet between any of the houses and
Any building, yes.
the building?
Yeah.
That may not be correct. We're checking.
That-
Yeah, because,
That's what's
Just-
proposed on our plan.
I thought it was 25 feet.
which to me is still not enough, because I'm a proponent of green space, and why cut down trees to ruin the beauty? Because when you showed these pictures, all I saw on the, street side, either Susquehanna or Old York Road, is concrete.
Well, that's because we were trying to pull the buildings as close to the road as possible, so.
Well, maybe it should be pushed back a little and not as many units or not as big of a development. One more question. In these rentals, are animals allowed?
Yes.
So where do they walk the dogs?
We're going to have to create a dog walking area in that area there.
And I do think you're correct, it is 25 in the ordinance. No, I just wanted to correct.
40 on the plan.
40 is the building setback.
Yeah, 40 is
Right,
the
so
building
we're looking
setback.
into that.
I
Okay.
believe you're right.
So this is zoned for multifamily, which means, correct me if I'm wrong, that there has to be a resident of 55 years or older, but that any member 18 or older can reside with that 55-year-old member, correct?
There has to be one person that's 55 or older, or we could make it more stringent, but that's what Fair Housing Act
Right,
says.
so one person, 55, everyone else who resides with that 55 person is 18 years or older. Okay.
Unless we choose to restrict.
So my question is, are your other properties also have that rule?
Yes, the Upper Dublin Terrace does.
So
yes.
55, but any member of the family, 18?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can you tell us roughly how many have younger residents living there?
I don't have that number. I would say probably about 10%, maybe 5%, somewhere in that range. But I can get that exact number. Yeah.
But the number of 18-year-olds is
I don't have
pretty
any.
easy.
I don't have any
Number of
18-year-olds.
18-year-olds
I
is like
mean,
0.
It's generally older. I have actually 85-year-old sisters that live there. I have some a mother and a daughter live there. The daughter's 65. The mother's I think 85. So, there is some age disparity there.
Hi, I'm about 2 weeks late on my 3-minute statement from the last meeting. I'm Amanda Detweiler. I'm a Highland Husky mom. I'm a resident of Huntington Road, and I own a second home on Wanamaker Road as well. As one of the neighbors who've worked about 2 weeks now educating myself on zoning, the Y, and BET investments, I'd like to say a few things. First, I want to state that Ben, John, and Michael Markman have complied with every request that my neighborhood has asked of them related to the meeting tonight. The meeting's not a mandated part of the zoning process, but they stood here tonight to answer our questions in an effort to be transparent in an issue that every person here is passionate about, and we all have our own unique perspectives, so thank you for that. Part of our neighborhood's emotional response from the first meeting was due to our perceived lack of time to prepare. We've had 2 weeks now, but it still feels like we haven't done enough and have more to explore. I'm going to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Vahey and say, what's the rush? The departure of the Y has presented a unique opportunity. Perhaps instead of having a very specific meeting about the proposal of BET and a zoning amendment, our time as a community could be spent pressing the pause button and understanding what the long-term plan is for Abington development at its center. Abington was founded in 1704 at the very corner we were discussing at Susquehanna and Old York Road. Our 15 distinct communities within Abington have a commitment to diversity, an award-winning school district, unique natural resources, and historic homes, all within proximity to an amazing city. We also have less fortunate areas of the township, some areas desperate for revitalization, and the challenge of a major thoroughfare cutting a path through our own town. Our commissioners have spent hours planning zoning in 2017, yet here we are in January 2018 and have this amendment before us. John Spiegelman has made his personal mission, it seems, to bring a town center to Abington, and he's been planning for years, but now the commissioners are being called on to act rather quickly. My neighbors and I know that the property will be transformed, and we know will be impacted under any circumstances. We'd be happy to continue working with BET, whose principals are also Abington residents. However, adding this amendment with the additional traffic concerns, over 200 increase in density, 63 increase in height, over 100% increase in building lot usage, and a 50% reduction in green spaces will not only be impactful to our corner of specific areas of Abington, but other areas as well. Before we move forward with the zoning variance process, I believe it behooves the residents and the commissioners to carefully consider a long-term plan for the heart of Abington.
My name's Ray Bell. I live at Parkview Avenue in Abington, not close to this development. I would like to ask a question. The photographs are very attractive. How much of this building is going to be masonry and steel?
Hasn't been designed yet, but a large part of it would be, yeah.
What is it?
A large part. It hasn't been designed yet, so we don't know.
Okay.
We don't
So
know.
you don't know how much is going to be masonry and steel?
No, these are just razor renderings.
And obviously, I'm concerned about that because of fire hazard
Right.
in this township.
Right.
The people that have already spoken, I won't repeat, but it seems that the studies are being done with the YMCA, but not what happens down at the end of Susquehanna and building down there, right? And I just wonder if the township wasn't spending its money reclaiming 5 or 6 buildings over there, would you still be interested in this construction?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, I'm just wondering how this meeting was advertised. I found out through a neighbor, 6:30, about 6:30 tonight that we were having this, and I called a few other neighbors. They had no idea. My commissioner is Stephen Klein, and I never got a letter or anything like that from you.
Well, can I tell you, I got his newsletter, and it was in there, because
Okay,
I get his newsletter as well.
Last one I got from him was about bamboo.
No, it was mentioned in, maybe
Okay, I
not
don't
on
get
the
his
email
li-
list. Yeah,
Some
so-
reason then I didn't get you
Oh,
cut me off your list.
I didn't cut you off, just send me your email, maybe it just got lost
Okay.
in spam.
Other people, were not, this wasn't advertised, I believe, in the Chronicle or anything. So I just wonder if there's a lot more people that would be here and have their concerns if it was advertised. I get flyers about the turkey trot, that's going to affect me for an hour on Thanksgiving, but, I didn't find out about this until about 6:30.
Can I suggest you get on John Spiegelman's email list, because his newsletter has everything going on within a 20-mile radius and keeps me informed.
Okay, I'm going to, all right. Can we assume that the $700,000 is going to go for a tax cut?
You have to ask the
Property
school,
tax?
ask the school board. Yeah, you'd have to ask the school board, because they're the ones who decide how much gets charged in taxes.
So we can't assume that. So there's not really a carrot for us. I mean, there's no payoff for.
It could be, I don't know, you have to speak to them. I mean, it's money that'll come in their hands. They're
Okay.
actually, I know they're in the middle of redoing the high school, and they have, certain needs right now.
Okay, I would like to know that information. Vital Waters, where is that? Because that would also contribute, right? Because that's right around the corner from this.
That's true.
So where is that with planning and things like that? So now we have Rydell Park, this thing going in, and then Rydell Waters,
Correct.
Wawa. I mean, how much more can, Penn State, you know, how much more can we absorb?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why all right around here? And also, I live right up against the fields on Rosemont Lane. And let me tell you, 7 in the morning, clang, 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 dust, noise. And I'm just wondering how that's going to go with the people in Sunrise, because things don't just go up. They, rodents, you smell, oh my gosh. I don't know, I'm sure you're in the business of, you know, with building and stuff like that. It smells when you start to unearth things. And Rosemont Lane, we had to put up with all that. And you know what we got? We didn't even get a fence. All this millions of dollars that went into this, and we still have the barbed wire fence that was put up probably 75 years ago. So I have a lot of mistrust about, you know, things that happen in this township.
Sorry.
You know what I mean? Because we were promised all this stuff, and look what we got. And we had to endure the noise, the dust, and the smell was terrible, terrible.
Thank you for being here today, and I'm sure you guys feel like you're getting assaulted, which it might be partially true. But in your traffic study, did that study pedestrian traffic way? And the only reason I'm saying it seems like a very desirable area for people to walk to because there's a number of buildings. And right now, the Y doesn't have any pedestrian traffic. You add to that school walkers are coming across a divided intersection. What I mean by that is the intersection doesn't flow directly across. It kind of navigates through, which causes some congestion and some confusion in the morning, which leads to backups. Then you have a crossway that's being navigated by the people down for this college that are now crossing across here. So I'm wondering what effects did your survey do for pedestrians?
No, we didn't look at pedestrian traffic, but it's something we can definitely look at, and I think it's a good point.
Okay, because I have 4 young children
Yeah.
that I'd like to have go to the library, and right now I feel a little bit nervous because of the amount of traffic congestion that there is there.
Yeah, no, and I agree. We've got to make more of a concerted effort to make sure everything's connected with safe sidewalks, and we'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay, and the other thing is there's traffic. I live on Gersteny Avenue, which is right behind Sunrise.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that get frustrated and cut through my area at a high rate of speed. And there's very little the township can do to that because of the traffic enforcement. There's already been 2 hit and runs along that road for this year, and there's been 2 robberies. And I hear that your age restriction doesn't necessarily, is that something you're going to legally have to encounter, or can you build the facility and change your mind later on?
No, I mean, anything we say we're doing now, well, first of all, we're asking for a text amendment, which would only allow us to build age restricted there. And the other thing that's generally done to ensure that we do what we say we're going to do, because obviously there's a lot of developers who don't do that, is, you know, we agree, and we just agreed to one in Horsham, we have one in Upper Dublin, it's called a negative declaration. So what it says is if in fact the zoning's granted and we develop it under the zoning, we agree that we have to do these certain things. And, you know, that's something that we're definitely willing to enter into, because we're not going to do anything that we didn't, you know, if we agree to it, we're going to do it, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is.
Okay, and I happen to be a retired state trooper, criminal investigator. What was the increase of crime of your other facilities? Because they tend to be an attraction to crime. It seems like it wouldn't be that hard to measure.
I can get in Upper Dublin, I can definitely get the statistics. I mean, we have almost no crime there. I mean, I can remember a couple of robberies in the past 10 years, but I'll get those numbers, the crime numbers. That's
Okay.
fine.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, thank you for having this meeting. My name is Connie Briggs. I don't live right around here, but I live up on Susquehanna near Fitzwatertown. And even up there, it's a lot of traffic, a lot of ambulances. That aside, you know, your little deck there is going to be, they're going to have to listen to ambulances all day. That aside, and I can tell you it drives me crazy just where I live. But that aside, I just have to ask you about the reference that you're using to determine the traffic in the area. The senior housing can vary widely. I do gardening for senior citizens, and I go to Whitpain Farm, I go to individual homes, I go to different places, and I have trouble parking my car at Whitpain Farm during the day because of all the nurses and the aides and the PT people, OT people coming in all day. So I have to just figure out what was in the survey, this land use 252 document, what were they looking at there as far as senior living, and compare apples and apples, because people, maybe when they moved in your upper Dublin Terrace, they're 75 years old and they're really going around and they're doing their yoga, and that's great, and I feel happy for them. People tend to stay in their homes because a nursing home costs like $10,000 a month or more. And so people are like, I can't afford that, I'm going to stay in my home as long as I can. And I have people who are 88 years old, and they have people coming in all the time, aides, PT, OT, all the time, and then they have to go to the doctors all the time. You wonder why Medicare is so expensive. It's because they need a lot to go to the doctor all the time. So I just have trouble understanding this traffic thing. Maybe for the first few years, you're right. Upper Dublin Terrace, for the first few years, you'll have active people in, but once they stay in those homes, in 10 years, I guarantee you, there's gonna be a lot more traffic unless doctors start making house calls again. And I just, you know, the ophthalmologist, the dentist, I mean, it's like, I take this woman to doctors on Tuesdays. That's what I help her with. And it's like, this poor thing has so many doctor's appointments. So I don't know how many people in the audience know. I just am gonna have to take a look at this ITB Land Use 252 document.
Well, it's actually, yeah.
I mean, I don't see, where would I find that? It says attached.
Strip generation,
That is attached in the report that table was extracted from the traffic report. That is a land use category that traffic engineers use to
Okay.
estimate what the trips are going to be from the facility. The trips are 774. That's the parking. I think
Right.
we may be talking about two different things. The availability of parking, which we've addressed in this memo as far as the number of spaces per unit, per person, really, in the facility. And what you're describing is you're making the trips instead of the person.
Well,
So
I go
those are
pick her
accounted
up.
for
Yeah.
in general
I'm the
with
one-
that age population.
I just don't think I'm not so sure we're comparing apples and apples here, because I don't know what is in that data. Where did that data come from? What kind of nursing?
It comes from
senior living?
studies that are done
Senior
across the
living.
country
Nationwide,
in that
yeah.
kind of category.
But
Yeah.
this place in 10 years is going to be more like Whitpain Farm.
Well,
When
we-
I go in there,
Yeah.
that parking lot is full during the day.
I mean,
People going in and out.
Dublin Terrace is 9 years, and it's pretty consistent. And once again, it's not generating much traffic. I mean, it's very consistent with this. You know, maybe people, I don't know why, but it's not a heavy traffic. And we have 1.9 spaces per unit, so there's extra spaces there for people to come in addition to the ones that are used. We have 1.47 people per unit at Dublin Terrace. We're providing 1.9 spaces per unit, so there's an extra 40 some odd spaces for everybody else at any given point in time. So, and that's assuming that every person there has a car, and a lot of the older couples have one car per two people. So there's probably even more excess parking.
You don't provide transportation for them, do you?
Just to events. We don't provide transportation anywhere else.
Store, food store? Or
No, I mean, it's something that we've considered, and we do some places, possibly here, but, you know, it depends. It all depends on, you know, where we end up with the development and, you know, lots of other factors. So,
Okay, well, I'll be looking for that document and
Sure.
take a good look at it.
yeah, we have a traffic study, and you can actually reference whatever. I mean, we can probably pull that for you.
Yeah. The other thing I have to ask is, what are the poor people on Huntington Road going to be looking at? Do you have a mock-up of that? Like when that poor person whose house is abutting this goes in the backyard and looks up, what are they going to see there? Do you have a picture of that, or
No.
do you have something to give us, help our
No, we don't have that at
imagination
this
with that?
point, right.
Because
Right.
that would really be a bummer. I mean, and it just seems too that also I drive to Northeast Philly to go do gardening for senior citizens in their homes, and I go up Susquehanna, and that's a nightmare, that intersection. Just, I just want to go up under that little bridge, make a left, and go to Huntington Valley. And the traffic there already is, you know, even with you say the YMCA as the traffic is cause of that, but I don't have to let people in, into the road, and even when I don't, it's still backed up near the light. I just think it's like a hazard. It's bad enough without anything there now, seems to me. With the hospital right there and all the traffic and all the people going to the stores on both sides. So I'm just saying, it just seems like it's the wrong place for certainly that ambitious a project, but
So what would you like to see there?
something, maybe a playing field or something where the water runoff will be better for that nice gentleman who had that nice comment, was very well researched. And,
Yeah, we're certainly not suggesting that all the traffic in the intersection is from the Y today. We're simply comparing what comes off of the site today, much like you would for the stormwater, from a traffic perspective. The Y generates what it generates.
Yeah, they put a camera there too, because they know it's not the best intersection, so I'm just saying, maybe there's another place for this. It sounds really fun. I'd love to live there if I could afford $2,000 a month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kathleen Chandler. I live on Horace Avenue. My only question is, do you foresee, if it goes through, road closures, one lane for that intersection? Like you'll have to close parts of the road at certain times a day? For all the construction, the vehicles going in and out?
We will, I mean, in my...
Because that's going to be a hot mess if that's the case.
Yeah.
In my 20-plus years of PennDOT permitting experience on a road like that, they're not going to allow us to close a lane. There may be slight width restrictions during construction as you do some of the edge road improvements, but they're not going to let us close Susquehanna Road or York Road or anything like that. Not even temporarily. I mean, off hours, they might allow a lane closure, but that's probably not going to work with the township's working hours, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Roy Gibson. I live on Huntington Road. My property is basically directly across from the Y. It sits almost 30 feet below the property that you're talking about. My concern here is the amendment to the modification to the zoning to go out to 80% coverage of the land and to go up to 65 feet. You know, just so you have history, I'm a plumber. I know my way around a set of drawings. I work in the industry. So I took a look at everything that was passed along by Ben Sanchez after we were alerted to what was going on here. You know, my concern becomes for my neighbors and myself. You know, what's going to happen? You cover 80% of that property. This gentleman put on the table some very hard facts and numbers. That's all coming my way because my property is off of your chart. You had a plan and you named the property owners that butt right up against it. Mine's across the street, but it comes right to the point in front of my house. So, you know, all that water's coming my way. It's a concern for me. The other thing I'm going to bring up, and I am going to say this, my wife brought it up, nowhere on your plans do we see any place for a trash container, receptacles, or dumpsters. You know, I have several neighbors that this property is now, you get the zoning you want, it's going to be within 25 feet of their property. You know, how can you guarantee they're not going to be downwind of some dumpster that's going to smell to holy heaven? You know what I mean? Unfortunately, that's a reality. You know, you're putting 225 units in here. You know, I'm not opposed to the building. I'm not. I'm concerned about the height. I'm concerned about the coverage. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, in driving by the property constantly over and over again, there's roughly 150 feet from the closest property on the corner of Susquehanna and Huntington Road. It's an open field. You know, I don't know what's between the other neighbors that come around the side, but I know a few of them have quite a large yard behind them, plus the 25 feet of drop-off. You know, so if you encroach on that 25 feet of drop-off and you leave just 15 feet of open space, I mean, it's still an encroachment on the property because now all that drop-off is still absorbing runoff.
Hi, I'm Bethany Lippa. I live on Huntington Road. My question is more of a bigger picture, longer term question for Abington in general. So we've spoken to a zoning lawyer in Ardmore, just to kind of get an outside opinion. And his experience with turnover in residential neighborhoods abutting high-density developments was that over the course of perhaps a decade or two, when you allow multiple developments in an area, for example, the YMCA property, Rydell Waters, the Penn State Abington dorms, Sunrise, over time, are you going to be using this residential property and turning it over to meet the needs of the development? And so just for our commissioners, we were just wondering how you're going to kind of protect our communities long-term, and if you anticipate us being surrounded by multiple commercial developments, is this going to encroach on us over time? Not next year, not the year after, but maybe 10, 20 years. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Herb McMahon. I live on Huntington Road. I'm actually right behind the funeral home. And to be honest with you, as I stand here right now, I'm not even sure where to begin. This man right here brought up some brilliant points about water, and it is just amazing to me that the answer that he got is it's something we have to look into, or it's something we have to consider.
That's not the answer. The answer is we have stringent requirements by the state and federal government that require us to keep the water on the site and infiltrate it into the soil. So if we can't demonstrate that we can do that, we can't get our approvals to do it. So that was not the answer. The answer is there's ordinances that require us to capture the water on the site and infiltrate it into the soil. And that's what has to be done if this is going to be developed. And if the development is too dense and that's impossible, then we can't develop it this way. It's just,
I know the history of the land. The land has had plenty of flooding. But before the YMCA built the addition, there's been issues of flooding in that area. There's also wetlands that are down right away in Huntington Road. I don't know if you're familiar with the topography. Have you guys studied that?
yeah, we know, I mean, I live here. I know the topography. I've been back
The
in.
underground streams and the,
Yep.
the runoff?
We understand that.
Okay. And I think as I stand here, the other thing that hits me is just the presumption of submitting an ordinance the way it was submitted. It just blows my mind. And I know Amanda Detweiler went over some of these changes that are proposed, and I would like to go over them slowly. Like the density goes up to 213%. From 16 units to 50 units. That is a huge 213% increase.
And it's consistent with 55 and older communities because they have less impact on the surrounding area. There tends to be more density. Now, we're willing to listen to concerns about density and listen to concerns about buildings, but what happens is if you build a conventional apartment unit, and by the way, 16 units also incorporates and includes and allows retail and mixed use. So the 16 units would also be first floor of retail. So it's not a straight comparison. If you want to adjust it for retail or commercial traffic, it would cause more traffic than 16 units would cause. Secondly, and as far as the increase in number of units, a lot of it's attributed to the fact that it's going to be 55 and older and it doesn't have as much impact. As far as the size of the buildings and everything else, I hear you and we'll take a look at that and I understand what you're saying. As far as the water, I hear you and we have to address that. As far as some higher density between 16 units the acre and commercial, because by the way, for commercial, you generally build 10,000 square feet, which causes a lot of traffic per acre. So if you built 40,000 square feet of commercial space with 16 units the acre above it, which is that would actually be fairly intense there. Now, I don't know if it'll get to the same intensity of what we're proposing, but there would be more intensity than 16 units to the acre. But the other things, the water is an issue and has to be dealt with and addressed. The size, I hear that people don't want to look at things, and that's something we're definitely willing to look at and address.
And the minimum setback went from 20 feet to 15 feet?
Right, 5 feet,
Yeah. I know that the northwest corner of that intersection, Susquehanna and 611, has had issues with setback. There's no sidewalk there, and I think And I think we're in the process of trying to fix some of this. And it just seems as though this is another thing, another example of something that just doesn't fit with the vision that we're looking for. The lot building coverage increases 114% from 25% to 75%. 114% increase in coverage. That to me just blows my mind. What do you think? Any thoughts?
I mean, 25% building lot coverage is a low coverage. I mean, we, developed this. It's, I don't know, you have any comments?
And the
maybe it is too much, but once again, that's a very low coverage.
Yeah, and then the impervious coverage increases 33% from 60% to 80%. I think this ties into the water problem, you know? Green areas decrease 50% from 40 to 20%. And the building height increases 63%.
The building height.
From 40 to 65.
What's the building height under AO,
Yeah.
Matt?
So AO, you can have 35 feet. There are some sections of AO that allow you to go up to 100 feet, depending on how close you are to the property line.
Is that Abington AO?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Because I
But
thought it was 40,
I
40
think
feet.
that's for like an educational use. It's a different use than what we're doing here.
Okay, and I think that changing the ordinance also scares me in the sense that the precedents that it presents. You're creating a situation where there's 3 other sites, or this is one of 3 sites that can be used in this way. And it just seems to me as though it opens the door for future development that isn't consistent with what I think this area is.
So you don't like the idea of senior residential housing, or?
I don't like the density. I don't like the fact that there's water runoff problems. Do you appreciate my situation?
No, I do. If you're telling me you don't like senior housing, I can understand. I mean, the other things
I'm
can be.
like roughly 100 feet away from your closest building. So I have a lot of problems with this text amendment. And I think it was presumptuous, even in answer number 1 in your answers to the community. Answer number 1 says that you would be willing to modify the ordinance to reflect the fact. It's not an ordinance, it's a proposal. It seems so presumptuous to even call it the ordinance. It's not the ordinance, it's a proposal. I mean, it just, to me, is very distasteful, the whole thing. I don't think, going back to the other comments of what we're looking for in the town square or a town center, how does this fit in, What's the vision we're looking for? John, could you have ever imagined anything like this? I mean, John, you were working on the town center.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the weeds, but the Old York Susquehanna project, which, just for the record, anyone who follows my newsletter has heard me ramble on the Facebook newsletter about the Old York Susquehanna project. That is a project totally separate from this, and it's a project that's moving forward. It is no way dependent on what happens with this, just FYI, so everyone's on the same page. Basic notion of this Old York Susquehanna project is the use of multiple state multimodal transportation grants to acquire the corner properties on the northwest corner, so the corner diagonal from the cemetery, northwest corner of Old York and Susquehanna, where the properties jut out into the intersection. Demolish those properties, fix the intersection. Basically, we all know Old York and Susquehanna has issues. It's misaligned in every possible direction. Seriously. Fix the intersection, creating proper turning radii for cars and trucks, safe access for pedestrians, bicyclists, and safe access for bus patrons. Part of the project involves creating a town. You could say it's a town square, but probably end up being a little more circular. On that corner with some street tree design, safe bus shelters. As folks know, there's no safe place to wait for the bus. and benches, basically a real sort of town center, which is something we don't have in the actual center of our township. So that's sort of the overall vision of that. Just a general,
If I may,
I just I can't imagine this type of building on this scale fitting into that vision. But anyway, the other concern I have is traffic. I live on Huntington Road. I think when the people leave your place, making a right-hand turn onto Susquehanna, their options would be to go to Susquehanna and make a right and cut through the neighborhood, or go down Susquehanna, which is a very windy road, and if your average citizen is 75 plus, I don't know if they would like the windy road going down, and you would have to go all the way to the fairway and then back up to 611 and either make a left or a right. I just envision that we're going to have an awful lot of traffic coming through the neighborhood.
And we're willing to consider anything that's proposed by the neighbors as far as with the street. I mean, if you want to make it one way, if you wanted to put a cul-de-sac on, we would be responsible for any of the costs associated with that. So we're open to any ideas the neighbors have.
All right, and I know from previous development with Rydell Waters, they said that the cul-de-sac idea was not good because there was snowplow problems, there was emergency vehicle access problems.
There are solutions to that, which we've
Okay.
engaged in before. But we're open to any suggestions as far as protecting our street from traffic.
Okay, and with our neighbors that live so close, what is the plan for the trash, the garbage and the trash?
there's a trash room in the building.
Where would that be
All-
located, as the plans stand now? Do you have a designated place?
I can tell you it's not going to be on the back side because that's not where we take access to. It's going to have to be on one of the other two sides.
Yeah.
That access towards the street.
Pete, I think we're planning for it to be off Susquehanna. It would be under much like all the parking is covered. The trash would be like under the building in that area.
Yeah.
So it's not going behind the building. It's going kind of within the building footprint that we've shown. So I mean, hopefully it won't.
So the idea is to have an enclosed trash room under the building, which they would pull out and remove.
And it's not a traditional dumpster situation where you have a truck with forks lifting it up. It's
Because that's a
they're
huge
toters
concern.
that they roll out.
This is a huge concern for the neighbors,
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I think it's a huge
No, it should be,
concern.
and it's something that's got to be, satisfactory to the neighbors as far as how that's handled. Absolutely.
I think I better give somebody else a chance, but
Okay.
I still, just one last thought to the commissioners. The AO text amendment just seems to me that as though it's just completely inconsistent with the AO that's there now, not even close. I mean, the jumps and increases are huge. They're not small. And I think that's something that the commissioners should take into consideration. Because I know, John, you did ask that question. Can you compare the AO presently to the AO that you're proposing?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's it, thank you.
Hi, I'm Betsy Cohn. I live in Ward 1 and actually found out about this meeting from Stephen's newsletters. One of the things that's interesting to me about the things that we've been given to reassure us about the project is that they basically all boil down to the insularity of the community within the project. So we're being reassured that it's not going to have a lot of impact on traffic because on the whole, people don't go out from it very much. They certainly don't go out from it in the morning to have breakfast. They don't go out from it in the morning to get in the evening to have dinner because they don't want to drive in the dark or they don't want to be working.
Can I just address that really quick? So the majority of the reduction in trips, the 360 trips, so 356 of them are the peak hour. And the peak hour is basically rush hour, either the rush hours. The people that live in these type developments, as far as trips, non-peak hour, there's only a difference of about 6 trips. They just tend to not want to leave during rush hour. So it's a very similar amount of people leaving, so you're really, the reduction during the day, from what the YMCA generates is very similar. It's just during rush hour. They tend not to leave during the heavy traffic hours because they don't want to. But if you're talking about like dinner time, they go out in dinner time, they go to breakfast. I mean, I can tell you, my Dublin Terrace people tell me where to go to restaurants all the time. My wife is always nagging me, we have to go to this restaurant. Someone at Dublin Terrace told me to go. So they're out and about. They just don't like to leave during rush hour.
Okay, so it's only a rush hour reduction in traffic?
Pretty much, yeah.
Otherwise, we're looking at the same kind of traffic?
Same kind of traffic. The 360 trips are mostly morning, afternoon rush.
360 trips.
Yeah.
We haven't looked at the walkability. There's not been a pedestrian
Right.
study. Your average age of the people who are there, 75. So not to impugn some of the very active 75-year-olds I know, but you're not talking about a walking community in an area that the township has talked about designating for its walkability to be a town center. Amazon is delivering there daily. That's great. I wouldn't have gotten through Christmas without Amazon, but you're not talking about people who are going out and walking around and patronizing the shops that we're talking about wanting to have in a town center. You know, we're looking at, and again, no, I'm not opposed to senior housing. I'm not opposed to senior housing at all. I have parents who live in Massachusetts. I spend a lot of my time trying to lure them into Pennsylvania where I can keep an eye on them. My brother's in New Hampshire. He's not going to be a lot of help. I understand the purposes of a community like this. I don't understand the purposes of a community like this on that corner, with the walls coming up as far as they can possibly go to the street. The mixed use that you described may not be significantly different in density, but it is significantly different in approachability. When I was a college student, one of the things that they did in New Haven when they were trying to make an area more pedestrian friendly, they had rules like if it's over 60 degrees, you have to have flowers out on the sidewalks. They gave low rents to businesses for that because they were trying to draw into the community. That's the kind of thing we're going to have to be thinking about if we want to take an area that people traditionally think of as a nightmare and make it an attraction. And I think as a community, we have to think about, is this a project that's going to make it an attraction for the people that, like, we have very few spaces in the township where we can do this. We've got Keswick Village and we have this. And the project that you're talking about could be a fabulous thing to have. I'm very supportive of it. I'm very concerned about it where you're going to put it. And I'm not one of these people who thinks that, oh, we're going to have a park there because it's going to get developed. It's going to get developed. That's the reality of the situation.
You like the mixed-use idea better than the senior housing idea? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't think that the senior housing idea in the density that you propose is going to build towards the township's vision in a place where we have very limited resources to achieve that vision. Yes. So that's my thoughts on it.
Carl Salas, thank you for being here and having this. 2 points. What kind of square footage is a one-room, and what kind of square footage is a two-bedroom? I don't think it was on there.
Yeah, I mean, as shown, we were looking
I
at,
didn't
we were actually looking at 75% two bedrooms, 25% one bedrooms.
Yeah, we're about 900 to 1,100 square feet on the one bedrooms, and then the two bedrooms are about 1,200, and our largest two bedroom is about 2,300 square feet. So they get pretty large.
Okay. Right off the bat, I don't trust studies until they happen. Because you go in front of the zoning commissions, you go in front of all the planning commissions, and you have economic impact studies, and it never seems to come out exactly what it is. And they tend to me to be biased to start, done by people that are the developers. But then all of a sudden, you go to the traffic studies, and you can go with whatever traffic study you want up there, but it's not all the same. Just like a car's not the same. If you're going north on Old York Road and you have that high facade, that in and out, with not only workers going in there, 75 and older people going in and out of there, you know as well as I do, on Old York Road, it's a speed zone, it's a crazy zone. No matter how many cameras you put up there, no matter how many you have, to interrupt the flow of traffic with those two in and outs is a real concern of mine.
Okay.
Because I go through there constantly. And you can say 323, I don't care if you say 623. It's the quality of the traffic and the quality of the life experience that matters, not the bogus studies that only find out after the fact that you learn a four-letter word called oops. That's it.
Hi, I'm back again, and I have another question for you. You talk about the water percolating into the ground. The water percolates into the ground normally, and it comes out at its lowest point. Its lowest point is Rydell Park, and its lowest point is the fairway. And it's fine to put all the water in there, but it doesn't stay, it moves.
Yes.
Yes. So what is your answer to that?
You are required to percolate it back into the ground to mimic today's infiltration rates that you have on the site. That's the goal of the MPDS program, is to put the water and restore the natural groundwater flow. And yes, it will absolutely come out in the stream. It'll follow that stream down to the next stream. All the water has to go where it goes today.
And so what you have to do is probably create a very large basin that captures the water on the site and percolates it basically at the same rate it's currently percolating today. So we'll have to build a basin.
Rydell Park has a basin that overflows the waterfall. Any heavy rain, that area floods. You do this, and the first floor apartments back in the Woodside and Parkside area are going to be underwater. And that's not just a guess, that's really almost a promise. And you've got to figure out some way to divert the water away from that. And that should be one of your top goals. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christopher Germain. I live at 1092 Huntington Road, which is at the eastern boundary of the YMCA property. I wonder if we can go back to the slide which shows the map of the development. I have a number of concerns, just like many of my neighbors who are here tonight. They can all tell you that this portion along Huntington Road where we all live, south of the property, is a very nice, quiet street. It's a good place to raise a family. So I live in that triangle right there.
Yes.
And, you know, we're talking about a development that, you know, within 25 feet is going to raise up to how many feet? 65 proposed?
No, within 20, this amenity deck is 1 story. So that's 1 story, and then you're going to be, how many feet is this?
That's another 68 feet, so it's 100 total feet off the property line.
Yeah, so it's 100 feet, if you can kind of look. So basically, then you have a 1-story.
But basically, my house is right to the left.
Yeah,
right
I
there.
understand. And that's, and I understand it may not be enough, but what we tried to do, at least initially, so we did have that, and we understand you're impacted, and we need to talk, obviously.
Okay, sure.
So, you know, what we tried to do here is make this 1 story, and then kind of step it up as it got further away from you. You know, once again, it may not be enough, but initially, that's what we were trying to do.
Well, I want to reiterate the person who suggested that we can have another vision of how it will look from our neighborhood along Huntington Road, because this is a very high spot.
Yeah, your house
is a very
is,
quick
yeah.
drop-off.
Yeah.
And I think the term here is prohibitive steep lands.
Well, that's actually on the other side.
So that's, can we identify exactly where the prohibitive steep lands are?
Right here, right?
Okay, well, there's also along my property is quite a large incline. And is that proposed to be graded off?
I mean, this is a proposed plan. I mean, if under this plan, there would have to be some retaining walls built here. On your side, there's not as, these are not the prohibitive steep areas.
It's quite steep on the southern part of my boundary.
The steep areas as defined in the township code are over on this side.
Can you, once again, repeat where the roads would be coming and going from your development?
This would be a right in, right out, right in, right out, right in, right out here, and then this would be lined with Rydell Park, with Sunrise, and this would be a full left out, left in.
So it's my understanding at the southern point of your development along Huntington Road, there is a paper alleyway, a 20-foot roadway. It's not there, but it's on the town map.
Right here?
Yep.
No, our 2 property lines intersect at the right-of-way line. We have no frontage on
Maybe
Huntington.
one of the commissioners can give an answer to that. I understand there's a paper alleyway which connects to Huntington Road.
I can email you my survey if you want to take a look at it, because it has everything.
Could we have your assurance that that will not be developed as a roadway?
Here?
If
Oh,
there is
absolutely.
one.
Yes.
And the commissioners as well?
I'm not aware of that either, but if they, I mean.
That's what I was told by the
applicant agrees to
YMCA.
it, No problem, yeah.
I mean, to your point, there's a very large grade separation between those 2 points. I mean, it would be
My concern is that there would be a
infeasible
roadway
for us to-
eventually put through
Oh,
Huntington
no,
Road.
and we would agree that we would never do that, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Gibson. I also live on Huntington Road. And I was wondering if you could address the mixed use, particularly what do you foresee going in there as retail space? Is it going to be for clients only?
No, we don't actually address any I mean, that was pulled from the remainder of the ordinance. We don't really intend to have anything in there.
What do you intend to have on the first floor then? Office
Amenity,
space?
no, it's amenity space
Just
for.
amenities.
Amenity space for the people that live there. Everything we have will for the
All right,
people who
so
live
no
there.
retail space is going to be
No,
in that?
no
Okay.
retail space,
All right.
absolutely not.
Second question, once construction would be started, where do you propose these people park? Because I'm going to tell you, we've already had issue with
I know.
the dorm that went in down the street, and the trash, and the noise, and the smell, and people relieving themselves in the middle of the street, and all of those issues. So what I'm concerned about is for the construction here, and then the construction that's going on behind us, where are you proposing that the construction workers would be parking?
Well, I mean, our idea is to have them all park on site. To the extent that they can't, we actually own the Abington Shopping Center. We can overflow in the back of Abington with some parked cars there. Or we also have we own Rydell Square, and there's a parking deck there, which the top 2 floors rarely get used. So if we had to run a shuttle, we would, because we own both those
So
properties.
you can guarantee that they're not going to be parking on our
Absolutely.
street? Because the other issue was the cars that were coming up the street, which they're not supposed to.
Right.
But they were coming up the street. There are many, many children. I happen to have one of the oldest children on the street, but there are many children younger, and my 16-year-old complained about the fact that as he was coming home, he almost got hit by one of the construction workers taking off at 3 o'clock because he wants to get home.
Okay.
Okay, so that's just a concern for everyone living on the street,
Okay.
is the construction. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Wasson. I'm in Ward 3, I think, over off of Huntington Pike and Rockledge Avenue. I appreciate you being here. I know you're a developer, it's what you do, you're not evil, despite what somebody think. And I understand that people on Huntington Road, anybody that's impacted by this is going to be upset. And I'm looking at it more from a lifelong resident of Abington Township. I've driven Susquehanna Road, Old York Road all my life, watched it progressively get worse and worse and worse. Literally, 2 days ago, I almost had to head on Susquehanna Road because somebody didn't want to wait for the line to the left turn lane going on to Old York Road and decided to come out in my lane and almost hit me. So as I look at your proposals, and I think if you're the architect, beautiful designs, I think it'd be absolutely beautiful in downtown Philadelphia where it's right up against the sidewalk like most of the buildings are down there. I echo the other statements about the tone of the property being right up against the road. I also, as I look at the designs, I don't see any ingress or egress lanes for people turning into you have these hard-edged garages where people, by your own admission, 70 plus. I've had lots of experience driving with older folks, and not to denigrate them, but, faculties are a little diminished, so they're coming up Old York Road at 40, 45 miles an hour, and then they have to make a sudden right turn into your property with no turn lane whatsoever.
That's a good
That's just
point.
an accident literally waiting to happen.
Yes.
Susquehanna Road is on any given day. Could you pop back to the traffic studies, perhaps, or, if you don't mind? Now, you have to forgive me, I was an English literature major in college, so I'm math challenged. But I see in the existing YMCA, you have weekday morning, total 231, weekday afternoon, total 224. In my mind, I add those two together and get 450, but yet you have 1,300 or 1,135 daily. How does that math add up? I'm curious. Am I not reading it correctly?
The two columns on the right are peak hour in the morning or in the afternoon. Just,
So that's strictly
just
rush
1
hour.
hour.
That's not counting the midday.
It's whatever the peak hour is. It's studied in 15-minute increments, and whatever the largest conglomeration of 4 15-minute intervals that come together, that's the peak. So that's the peak hour.
So the aggregate
So that
number
only
of
represents 2
11:35.
hours of the day. The rest of them are spread out during the day.
The aggregate number of 11:35 is weekday morning, weekday afternoon, plus midday.
And if you look at ours, there's, 30
Lower
and
as well.
56.
Yeah, in all fairness, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that my main concern is the traffic. My also concern is the tone of the corridor. I mean, as a lifelong Abington resident, again, to the commissioners, I think the idea of Abington Town Center is kind of a joke because we've almost lost that battle from Wawa and Jenkintown up through, the parking deck that was allowed to be built for the hospital, up further north. It's kind of a lost battle, so I'm not fighting against this. I would like to see it toned down for sure. I'd like to see it set back more. I realize there's economic realities as a developer. You say you're an Abington resident. I'll take that at face value. You probably don't live anywhere near that, and it's not going to impact you very much.
I live closer than you do.
Okay.
Yes.
I
I go through
I
the
was
section
looking on
20 times.
I was looking
a
on
week.
B&T Investments website, and it says Bruce E. Toll principal, who was a resident of Florida. So
His house, his primary residence is here. He is a
well, that's not what your website
Florida.
says. but-
He's a Florida citizen,
Okay.
but his primary residence is the old Hollowell Estate, which is the corner of Susquehanna and Meeting House.
Okay.
And I live right near there as well.
Okay, so pretty far away from this. It's not being built on your backyard. But,
It's a mile and a half.
yeah, but it's not being built on your backyard. But that's
No, that's true.
That's the Huntington Roads people's problems, not mine necessarily. But I'm more concerned about the overall look and the setback. So, but thank
Okay.
you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, just real quick. Hi, I'm from Ward 13. I'm coming really late to the information party on this. I got Mr.
Can I tell you
Stevens-
something? You're not late because this is the start of the process.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first meeting. We're getting feedback and we'll look at
Okay.
it and modify any way that we possibly can according to the feedback, so.
All right. My question's really for the commissioners. Have you investigated other uses of this land yet? Is this a done deal that they're going to develop it?
No,
or
nothing's,
have you-
it's not a done deal. We're proposing a development. They haven't agreed to it, so.
Okay, all right. Did you have a question? for me?
No, I think actually.
I think that answer was sufficient. This has just come before us. We didn't
Oh,
actively
okay.
investigate anything, and there's no done deals or anything.
Okay. I know you're not for mixed usage. Maybe we would want to consider that. I guess we have to figure there's not going to be any jobs generated through this project. Maybe some construction jobs.
There'll be
going
some.
forward,
I mean,
but-
as far as people that work there, not, like, probably 8 jobs, but not a lot.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
That's accurate.
It's also, again, housing for people that can pay $2,000 a month.
It's accurate.
For a unit.
Mhm.
That's difficult. It's pretty much a high-rise. So I guess my question is, where can we say that we don't want this to happen here on this corner? What is our opportunity, commissioners?
So you'll have the opportunity to go in front of the planning commission, talk to them, and then you'll have an opportunity in front of the commissioners if in fact there's a hearing to say it at that point. So this is really just to talk to us and tell us how we can modify it that would satisfy the residents. As far as speaking, I mean, they're listening, obviously, but speaking to the commissioners, you'll have the planning commission meeting, which they'll take your feedback and make a recommendation.
Mhm.
And then if there is a hearing, you'll have an opportunity to speak at the hearing and say, if you don't like it, you don't like it. So there's 2 opportunities in front of the appointed planning
Mhm.
commission and the elected commissioners.
Okay. I just think that maybe we have to look at the $800,000 of tax money that's generated each year for this project. Can we do better than that? By looking at a mixed use or not necessarily a 55-plus community. Maybe there would be some apartments for people other than 55-plus. I'm just trying to wonder if this is the best bang for our buck. I mean, even all the problems with the water and the traffic and kind of the way it's going to look on that corner gives me enough pause right there. But, I'm just directing it to you guys. My commissioner's not even here, so I kind of wonder why.
Ma'am, you said you live in Ward 13?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, just to make sure you know, do reach out to Commissioner Gillespie to. I mean, I can't control.
I get
what
all
you-
my news from you, Speaks. You're the best.
I've been writing down I've been typing everybody's comments.
okay.
So
All right, so
tell her to though.
I will.
Commissioner
But-
Gillespie had a scheduling conflict this evening. She did call me, but she's going to review the videotape as well.
Okay, I'll try and find her. But like I said, I don't know, I don't even live in this area. I feel really bad for these people, and can we do better for our community? That's it.
I'm also a resident at Huntington Road. I have some questions about question 10, will sex offenders be allowed to rent at Abington Terrace? And you say that we do criminal background checks for all of our residents. What does that involve? Do you allow people with drug abuse offenses, minor offenses, to rent? Have you thought of that?
You know, I have to talk to our operations people. I don't, you know, if people are convicted of a crime, generally they are not permitted to rent for us.
Crime are we talking?
You know what?
Minor offenses or felonies?
I can get back to you. I have to talk to my operations people. I know that we don't allow criminals to occupy our apartments.
And what about the construction workers? We had to make numerous phone calls when they were working on Rydell Park. They're going to start building there. We had to. They did not heed our their recommendation. They were parking on our streets. We had to make numerous calls for them to change. They had bad attitudes. To do criminal background checks for the construction workers. The reason why I'm asking is, and I would like that to be answered, please.
I'm saying I don't know. I can find out.
Look into that because personally I work in social work since 2004, and I know for a fact that there are a lot of people with criminal backgrounds who work in construction, and they have questionable criminal background, and we have minor children in the neighborhood, and I am concerned that during breaks or before work or after work, that they may be tempted to, you know, rob or whatever.
Right. I think that's a legitimate concern. We'll look into it.
So if you can provide an answer, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Connie Briggs, and I just have another comment about, I help a lady over in Mount Airy, West Mount Airy. They just built something near Weaver's Way Co-op, this big apartment complex, and it's taken much longer than they said they were going to take, which almost always happens. And the construction workers park on people's curbs, so now the property owner's trying to figure out how to make sure the city pays for that, and then they make a mess. They leave their trash everywhere. They're parking everywhere. Sometimes they're not even that, they're rude sometimes too. Some of them are not rude, but it's been hellish for those poor people. So that's a huge concern. They hate that man who built that building there. So I'm just letting you know, if you can't do better than that, it's not going to be good, you know, for you.
I can tell you, you know, we're probably doing, I don't know, $400 million in construction. We've done probably $1 billion, and people, I have relationships with people before and after, and we're accountable. I mean, we're accountable for what we do, and we'll continue to be accountable. And we own, you know, we own property. We don't build it and sell it, and we want to own this. You know, the one question that the neighbors gave is, are condos more profitable than rentals? We don't do condos because we develop property that we want to keep. I can tell you right now, we've actually never sold an apartment unit. We don't intend to sell apartment units. We tend to keep it for generational ownership. So, and that's what we want here. And, you know, we want to own a great property in Abington, and that's why we're doing this. So.
Okay, and if I were an older person too, I'd like to be able to walk outside, you know, not just on your deck, but I'd like to be able to go to the store.
I think we have to do a pedestrian study.
It's not walkable for them.
Yeah, we've got to do the pedestrian traffic study.
If somebody's in a wheelchair, you know, and you want to go outside for a walk and go to a restaurant or a store, if you can put it in a place near where you can take your older person who you're helping there and walk in the wheelchair out in a nice sunny day, it would be kind of nice, you know. I mean, the deck's nice. I'll tell you, I'd love to live on that, you know, that's just on the deck there. But the other question I have to ask, just as from this year of all of the things that have happened, I have to ask if the commissioners and the planning committee and everybody, if they signed some sort of agreement that they aren't investors in this, because I hate to say it, but after this year, I think a lot of people probably would agree that you don't know what's going on.
Well, I can assure you that the only people involved in the partnership are Bruce Toll, myself, and Bruce's heirs. There's no other owners in this
But you have investors and...
No, we don't. We generate our own cash. We have no investors. We do it with our own money.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I don't have the money to invest in anything. I invested in this extra large bag of lozenges, and that's my last purchase for 2 weeks.
Good evening. My name is Skip DeMassa. I live on Morden Road, very close to Huntington Pike. I've been taking a bunch of notes, and I have some comments and some questions. I'll save most of my comments for later meetings. I did hear somebody up here say that with respect to water management and drainage, the goal is to mimic current percolation stats. In my experience, which is not on the construction side, water management is an inexact science, and we know how drainage is supposed to work based on the best calculations that we can come up with. But what I haven't heard is that once this thing is built and some neighbors begin having water problems, lawsuits begin, and the developer who's going to say, well, I followed all the codes, I had all the approvals, the developer has clearly the deepest pocket, and in every case will win a war of attrition with its neighbors. I also heard the comment that there's not going to be any retail space here.
Correct.
Is that current plan? Could that change? Is that a covenant that goes with the land?
We're happy to make that covenant, yes.
How many other locations within the township would be affected by this amendment?
From what I can tell, the only existing AO zoning within the distance of a hospital is the current Meadowbrook apartment complex. So essentially, they could, with the acreage that we're talking about, they could tear down and build more dense apartments in that location because of its distance from the hospital. Our planner looked at it. Was there anything else? That was the only location that would be affected. So yes, that could potentially, they could tear down and build larger senior housing there. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I live on the other side of Holy Redeemer Hospital, and I have a serious concern that that development could extend to the other side of the hospital where my home is.
Is it zoned AO where your home is right now?
No.
No, I'm just talking, it's not zoned AO at this point.
No,
so.
but there's also a move to change current zoning in this situation, isn't there?
Right, if somebody came in, you'd have the opportunity to come and say you don't want it to be changed, just like you have right now.
So again, I mean, we're looking at potentially, you're opening the door for potential development throughout the township. I'm not sure.
Well, no, we're opening the door for potential. I can tell you, Penn State Abington went in and they did a map change and a text amendment, and it's a process. We did a map change, actually we did a text amendment and just in Upper Dublin. I mean, this is kind of, if there's a development you want and it gives the commissioners complete control whether they want it or not, and they can tell us we don't want it or they do want it with conditions. So it's actually a very safe way, because if you say, okay, we want less density, you can talk about less density. If they say they want to put certain restrictions on us, we enter into a negative covenant, which says if we ever developed it under that zoning, we couldn't do certain things. It actually gives a lot of control over the commissioners to do it this way if they wanted to, in fact, do it. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. So it's completely discretionary on their part. And if they go and you want to change something else to AO that's within 2,000 feet of a hospital, you know, it's up to the commissioners. And we could go away tomorrow and someone could come in and say, I want to change it to AO and I want to do a text amendment.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with us. It tends to be the way zoning gets done in a lot of places. And I can tell you, many, many townships look at zoning this way. And, you know, if the commissioners want to, fine. If they don't, what we're trying to do is, what I want to do is hear out what's being said today. And if there's problems with what I'm doing, modify it as much as I possibly can in a way where I can eliminate as many concerns as possible and then present something that's more palatable. It might not be completely acceptable, but it's more palatable.
Right. So. And I think we can agree that zoning changes are all part of a process. Mm-hmm. So the issue that we have is that there was a zoning redraft for this township that was completed less than a year ago.
Right.
And it was done for a reason. The concern is that this is going to this will drastically change current zoning and all the thought that went into what this township should be.
On this particular parcel, yes. It would change it.
This particular parcel and other potential parcels, that's the issue.
The Meadowbrook apartment complex, it could potentially change that. But I can tell you also, that the YMCA this has been a sale that's been pending, for a period of time.
Understood.
I mean, it could have been considered, it wasn't, and community service and R3 on our main commercial corridor, and this might not be the right use for it, don't get me wrong, but I think, R3 zoning and community service on one of the few 4-acre parcels on Old York Road is probably not the right use for this. And you may disagree as far as whether our use is the right use, but there's probably some other use that makes more sense for this piece. And I think, it wasn't looked at and probably should have been looked at, so.
Right. But again, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that because zoning is a process, if we start eroding the current zoning statute that was just completed less than a year ago, that opens the door for the next developer, maybe not as scrupulous as BET is, to come in and propose something else and erode, again, what Abington Township, what many of these neighbors here believe Abington Township is and should be. That's a concern that I think many people will agree with. I can tell you that many of my neighbors who were not able to be here tonight are very alarmed at the prospect that, and they're not sure that this is just limited to 2 hospitals. They think that depending on how you define hospital and how further you can erode the statute, there could be potential for other development with less scrupulous developers.
Well, we pulled the definition of hospital from the current zoning code and put it in the responses. And it's in my opinion, the only 2 hospitals in the township, and there may be one, I don't know if there's any
It's
other.
very specific, and there are only 2.
There's only 2, and is Holy Redeemer and Abington Hospital.
I understand.
The way it's
And
defined.
the only point I'm trying to make is, I practice law, and I can tell you that this kind of stuff is a lawyer's dream, because we're always looking for loopholes and always something else that we can change just a little bit so that we can accomplish what our client wants us to accomplish. And again, it's a concern that there will be an erosion of the current zoning status of this township, and that's not what these people are here for.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Peg Connors, and I live on Guernsey Avenue. In your little picture, I'm the street right behind Sunrise, and I'm on the back end of Sunrise.
Right.
And I remember being in a room like this when they were talking about building Sunrise, and we were all promised a lot of things. And for the most part, I think on Susquehanna, Sunrise looks very nice, but from my front window and my front porch, I see trash being picked up in the middle of the night. I see snow plows, excuse me, at about 3 in the morning. I have to call the police a few times with what's going on. So can you speak to how you manage your property and what's in store for the residents?
Well, we manage our property. We're based, we just moved our office to Welsh Road and Dreschertown Road in Upper Dublin. We have in-house management. I mean, I live here. I mean, we own the Abington Shopping Center. We've invested a lot of money in making that nicer. I'm constantly reinvesting because I have to get new tenants, and I can tell you, I have 2 new tenants coming in, so it will be full. And if you look at Abington Shopping Center, I invested a fortune in it, and probably more than I would have anywhere else. You know, I redid the whole facade. I put in Sports Authority. They left. I put in Michael's right away. Corner Bakery's left. I have another tenant going in there, and then I have a new use going in next to them. So I really care about my properties, especially here, because I live here and I drive by them all the time. And by the way, if I don't take care of them, my wife lets me know and I have to do it. So as far as us being in this particular location, you know, and Bruce is here too, and a lot of his friends are here. He wants to make a place for some of his friends too. So I don't think that's a worry as far as maintaining the properties. And I'd be happy to take you over down to Dublin Terrace. And once again, anyone, I'd love to take people through Dublin Terrace and just to show how we maintain it, who lives there as far as the residents and the nature of the residents, you know, what kind of activities go on, the traffic that goes on there. We're really doing this because we want to do this, something like that, closer to home. So, you know, we take pride in how our properties are maintained, and I would love to prove it to anyone by taking them down there and I would be happy to have a neighborhood meeting at our clubhouse so we can kind of talk about some of those things. But, that's something I can control. As far as the density, I understand I got to deal with that, and that's an issue. But as far as management, I can tell you we're really good managers, and we care about our properties. And we probably invest too much in them.
And not to layer on that, you're probably all sitting there thinking, yeah, he's just saying that. I can tell you that when we did Abington Shopping Center and the landscaping went in, he called on a Saturday morning while I was trying to coach a kid's soccer game to tell me that the landscaping that went in was not big enough, even though it went in per plan.
Yeah.
And Monday morning, we were out there taking it out and putting bigger stuff in. So he does care.
It's important. I mean, it's important to us. And, I put up there Abington, a great place to live on my sign. I mean, I am proud to live here, and I know that whatever it comes with, I was on the planning commission for 7 years. I was a commissioner. Bruce Toll was a commissioner. I mean, we're invested here, and that's why we want to do something great here. So as far as maintenance, I don't think there's any issue, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
And ma'am, if you have any Sunrise property maintenance issues, please
Yeah,
feel
I think
free to
I'm.
direct
I
them
think
to
I'm
me,
gonna-
and
I'm
I'll.
going to call you Ben. Yeah, thank you. Oh, and one other question. Can you speak to how tall the building is relative to Sunrise? Is it going to be taller than Sunrise?
Yeah, I think Sunrise is 3 stories, so it's probably about 35 feet. Here, in some areas, we're 50 feet above grade, and in other areas, we're closer to 60.
Yeah, so it's taller.
It's taller.
Yeah.
Well, Sunrise is probably considerably taller than 35 to the peak.
I mean, taller
To the peak of the roof. Yeah, you're right. I mean,
I would say in
it
the
might be
tallest
40.
point, we can get you that. I think it's more like 40.
Ours is a flat roof, theirs is obviously has a very tall roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it going to be gated? Is it a gated community?
We hadn't really considered that.
There will probably be some type of secure parking within it, but there will be a certain amount that is not.
Yeah, we'll have a gate at some point, probably for the residents assigned spots, and then there'll be open spots for people that are visiting.
How long do you anticipate the building of this from the day that the first shovel is?
Yeah, this is our thing, approximately a year and a half would
Year
take to
and a half.
build.
Okay.
20 months.
As I said, up against the fields, and those people started at 6:30. I was calling 6:30. Every day it got a little earlier and a little earlier. I don't know what their incentive was, why they needed to get out there that quick, but they were out there, and people were complaining and things like that. So I was wondering what time would be start time if this thing goes through.
I don't know what the township specific ordinances are.
7 in the morning is pretty early.
I could tell you that's called contractor creep. They try to start earlier,
Yeah,
work
especially
later,
when you have
especially in the summer.
seniors.
But again, to the point, Michael will drive past this every day on his way to work, and it comes in about 7 a.m., so we will hear it. We will hear
Well, no,
about it.
I drive to the gym in Upper Dublin Township
That's
at
true.
5 a.m., so I'm up Susquehanna. I go to sometimes to LA Fitness, sometimes Lifetime in Upper Dublin. So I am driving down Susquehanna every day, looking over, and I will stop and make sure that there's
I
not
just think it's
problems.
early at 7 in the morning.
Yeah, that's too early.
Be
Yeah.
out there, and
I
as
think
I said,
that's
it got
something,
earlier.
yeah.
And we would call and, oh yeah, we've been hearing from the neighbors, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would request that this next meeting that, as I said, for the turkey trot, for an hour of inconvenience, I get a letter in my mailbox.
I'm telling you, you got to get on Spiegelman's.
So I would request at least a square mile that you get either somebody to deliver letters or you put out something in the mail. I think it's only fair. Not all of us are on Facebook. As I said, I did not know, and neither did other neighbors know about this meeting until I got a call at 6:30 at night tonight from one person.
Okay.
And also,
Joy, I'll check with you, but your email is still on my newsletter and was sent.
okay, I maybe it's another email. I don't know.
We could check, but
we'll
maybe,
check.
okay.
All right, and the other thing is, I don't know. I wouldn't want to look out to a cemetery. Is that? Maybe it's me, and I kind of, I don't know. Oh, it's a night. I know it's but I mean, if I'm 75 years old and I'm hearing ambulances go back and forth, and I see a cemetery, I don't know how comforting that is. Do you? I mean, really, seriously.
It's that particular cemetery is a really important feature in this township.
Yeah, but a
And it's
cemetery's
not,
a
no, but
cemetery.
it's not it's a historical place. It's not a morbid place, and it kind of signifies, the start, obviously. So, we thought about that. I'm not concerned about people being worried about living next to that, because it's almost more like a history marker than
But it's
anything
kind
else.
of a reminder that in a couple years, I'm going to be moving from Terrace.
We try to keep our residents busy so they don't think about that, so.
Hi, Amanda Detweiler, Huntington Road. Two quick things. We think maybe Einstein is the other place that the zoning amendment could apply, the Einstein Surgical Center.
But that's in Cheltenham, isn't it?
No.
You're talking about Einstein.
On Huntington Pike, there's a surgical center right by Iron Hill Brewery on the left-hand side. So that's all AO. I mean, if somebody wanted to go through the motions, I think right on that corner on Huntington Pike.
So maybe if there's,
Is it over 10 acres?
That's business, that's
I
a,
don't know.
that's
No.
a
I
business center.
Has to be over.
oh, you're talking about Holy Redeemer's place there.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah,
it's on the
there's no
corner?
inpatient there. It's
Oh,
got to have
okay.
inpatient, there's no
Okay,
inpatient.
so that was the only other
Yeah,
place
I
that
live
we
right,
could
I live
come
close
up
there,
with.
so, yeah.
I think speaking for at least the southern Huntington Road neighbors, I haven't confirmed, I think most of the northern Huntington Road neighbors, we're all for seniors. As my daughter would say, we're surrounded by old people on three sides, right? We've got our Rydell friends, we've got Sunrise. We can't think of a better use for this space than luxury senior living. It's the building size, the impervious space, it's all this
Right.
other stuff that we have to work through, but we would embrace the further surrounding of ourselves by old people, knowing that we would have lots of options to move to shortly. So we just don't want you to think that.
Oh, no,
we're
no,
like,
and I completely
Yeah.
understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from, and we're gonna go work on it and see what we can do to try to alleviate as many concerns as possible.
But we like seniors over a lot of different use cases that it could be. So
Right.
thanks.
Hello, my name is Joe Rozak. I live on 1927 Susquehanna Road, which is right around the corner from here. I have a couple of questions and some issues. The main issue, I think, is density
Okay.
and setback. Where is your drop-off and pickup area on the plans?
It's gonna be under the garage,
Under,
inside.
and how are they, okay, there's going to be enough of a height for a FedEx truck to get in there?
Yes.
That tall?
And a fire truck.
And a fire truck?
Yeah.
And a
You better
trash
get
truck.
better,
And a
more
trash truck.
setback.
Yeah.
Frankly, about your architecture, I don't want to put you down or anything. I don't find it very inviting. You went to the local, you're looking at local space around here, looking at the hospital and that architecture. I don't really want that kind of architecture. It's not going to draw me in. It's coming so close to the road. It's a wall. We don't need walls. We need something that's inviting. I don't find anything inviting about that architecture. That's my opinion, and that's strictly what it is. I may be wrong. But for the person living next door, I wouldn't want that parking garage, the way it's drawn, to be next to me. All right? I'm looking forward to having that corner lot being demolished and that being improved. This isn't going to add to it. It may not subtract, but it's not going to add to making it a better location. It's a good walking area. You need more setback. It's more inviting that way. I think if Uber is coming to pick somebody up, they're going to stop in front. They're not going to go underneath.
There's gonna be a lobby entrance underneath.
Yeah,
That's where
where's the
people go.
car going to park? On Susquehanna?
No, in the garage. We have 45 extra spaces. There's spots right inside.
They're going to know to go there.
Yeah.
The cab
that's how
is
you
going to
get
know
in.
that.
An Uber driver, yes.
You sure?
Yeah.
You're going to guarantee that so that the Uber stops on Susquehanna?
No,
to
it
pick
goes
somebody up?
underneath and goes to the Uber lobby, which is underneath.
I'd like to
in the
see more
garage.
designs on that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, we're early in this. I mean, I can't do all the architecturals on a building, especially when obviously there's some density issues. And these are things, and I can tell you right now, I mean, this would be for us, a $40 million plus investment. This is what we do for a living, and I'm glad to take your suggestions, but the Uber coming underneath, if we create an Uber lobby and we, train people where to go, is definitely possible they can go there. We have a similar situation right now in another apartment complex that works, and, this is this is kind of what we do, and we
Yeah,
know what will work
I
and what won't
understand
work.
that.
Yeah.
And also, I've got a no left turn sign right in front of my house, and everybody makes a left turn there.
I don't.
You come down Church Street?
I don't make a left-hand
Well,
turn.
they're making left. So Pete, you say you're going to have right only, you're going to get lefts.
Yeah, that's an issue you got to deal
You're
with.
gonna get lefts. And
I know that's got to
a
be
major issue
controlled. I
a
agree with
road
you on
like
that.
Susquehanna, because you're not going to widen it.
Right.
You can't.
Right. There's nowhere
We've
around
gone
it.
through this before. You need more setback.
Okay.
And of course, with that setback, you can't have that density.
Okay.
And water runoff, I don't have that steep incline. I've got a small incline. I've got parking lots. I'm always underwater.
Okay.
I feel for those people. They're going to get hit.
Right.
Thank you.
Laura Lehman, and I want everybody in the room to know that I have a website, abingtoncitizens.com, where I do what I can't seem to get the township, or perhaps I might be able to get the developer to do. We need one page where all the links are going to show up. So that would be the link, so we want to see the presentation, or if we want to see the link to this meeting that you're filming, or the link to the commissioners' meeting, when the next date is, all on one page. So everybody here can go to one page. Right now, you can go to Abington Citizens and find that page, but I don't want to have to do all that work, so I would very much like the township or Mr. Markman to volunteer that. Can I get a promise?
I promise you that I will put together a website page that has all the information on the project. It might take me a few more weeks, but I'll do it.
Okay, all right, good, that's good. And it should probably connect into something from the township, should be one link.
That's up to them.
Yeah, but
That's up to
you have
them.
enough connections at the township, I think you can pull that off.
I thought I
And
did,
you're a
but
$40
I
million
don't.
investor, I think you can pull that off at the township, they're all your friends. So the other thing that I want to know is exactly what areas, did you put up a map and I missed it? Did you put up a map somewhere of exactly what other people are affected by this?
So this is, what happened is we're going to go to the planning commission, and John Kennedy, our planner, has looked at that, and we're going to make our we haven't had a chance to make our expert presentations, and they're going to be made to the planning commission at the next planning commission meeting, and he's looked at that. But we can talk about the only AO zoning that is within 2,000 feet of a hospital other than us is, I believe, the Meadowbrook Apartments. So essentially, if they had vacant land there or they tore down some buildings, they could build for this use. Now, I'm going to confirm with him, but that's my understanding.
Well, there's also a big empty lot right across from, at Morden and Huntington Pike, that might.
Yeah, but it's
that's a
5
sister
acres,
zone.
5 acres or more. So,
Well, this is the problem. So there's two problems with this. And one is 5 acres is easily garnered by buying multiple properties and putting them together. In fact, you did that. And AO is easily garnered by simply requesting that zoning because you did that.
well, no, we didn't get it. I mean, I can tell you, but let me ask you a question.
But you're doing that
Let me
now.
ask you, so 5 acres within 2,000 feet of the Abington Hospital, and I think I've pretty much, I mean, where am I going to find that?
Well, see, I want you to do that. I want you to tell me all the places in advance now,
So-
because
so
those
yours-
people should be here.
If I put together, 20 houses?
They should be here. Those people should be here at this meeting. You heard these people say that it
There's-
took them time to get up
There's
to
no,
speed.
there's no tracts of ground. I can tell you that the 4 acres that the YMCA is currently on is probably the largest, at this point available. I mean, I've scoured the township looking for, potential sites to try to improve my community and, do something nice, and there's just not a lot. I mean.
But it didn't have to be 4.7 acres. It just was that because you had 4.7 acres, and so you wanted to write it for yourself.
Well, what we're trying to do is make it so,
essence-
what we're trying to do is make it so it doesn't apply to many sites in the township, and the only other site that it would apply to
Right.
would be that. Yes, and anyone else can go and apply for a zoning change, so let's look at this. If you go away tomorrow, our project gets, the commissioners say they don't want it, which is fine, or we don't get to a density. I mean, what I suspect is ultimately, we're going to have conversations with the neighbors, we're going to try to satisfy them as far as density and setbacks. Let's say that doesn't happen, and we go away tomorrow. Anybody else can come in and make the same request. And if the commissioners want to, they can hear it, or if they don't want to, they don't have to hear it.
Well,
Because that's just.
another one of the problems.
It's
So
a
let me-
free,
let
we
me-
live in a free country. Anybody can ask for anything, and anybody can say no to anything.
Of course. Let me continue, because I have quite a few things that I wanted to say. So that's actually another one of the problems. You heard somebody say that how this was done was very presumptuous. This is presumptuous because you don't own that zoning, you don't own that property, although you said that you did at the last meeting. You only own an equitable portion of it, an equitable interest in it. And so you don't own that property, and so you don't actually have AO zoning on that property, and so you're actually just going to ask the commissioners to gift all of that to you, and while you do, it's going to be many other properties who didn't have the benefit of being in this room, or to hear the previous presentation, and you are going to try and pass this zoning as quickly as you can, and when you do, those people will be impacted. So these people here who are already happen to know about it, and many of the ones that are impacted now don't, these people here, I want them to think about if this zoning was happening in the room, and when he came and gave that project, you had no say. You couldn't talk about setbacks, or if he could reduce units or anything else, you'd have no say. He would own that use by right, and that use goes with the property. So that's going to happen somewhere else. And that is what's presumptuous about this process. And the commissioners had the ability to tell you, no, until you notify everybody who might be affected, and until you present all the information so that we can really see if this is a good project, we are not going to take action on it at all. And that's what should have been done. So the first thing is that we as residents need to begin to tell our commissioners that these kinds of processes have to change, because one man's property is not equal to all the other properties it affects. Okay? You had one vote, but these people had many votes. So it really is a process that has to change. I want to just say that what we talked about, for instance, the 361 trips. Did you add in there things like the maids that are cleaning the apartments? Did you add in the caregivers that are going to be caregiving? Elderly people often have somebody that helps them with shopping or helps them with dressing or something, not assisted living, but just somebody that comes and helps. Did you add those things in when you did that?
Those trips are estimated based on studies done by traffic engineers at similar properties across the country.
Okay, all right. So, and 50% you said of the Upper Dublin residents are from Upper Dublin.
No,
So-
they're either from Upper Dublin, they have children in Upper Dublin, or they have children in
Or
Upper
they
Dublin.
have children, so they're
Yes,
not necessarily.
children in Upper Dublin.
Okay, so do we know what percent was actually from Upper Dublin? Do you know that percent?
I've gotten it before, I don't have it, but.
Okay. So that, I mean, that's a concern, that we're actually building to attract deeper density, which I think you know, everybody has told you about traffic.
Well, I said
other
50%
things.
aren't from Upper Dublin and don't have children in Upper Dublin, so it's 50-50, so.
Okay, all right. And also, according to the fair housing with the age restricted, 20% of that housing, according to their guidelines, doesn't have to even have a 55-year-old in it.
That's accurate, yes.
Okay, so 20% of that housing in your building could actually be young families.
No, it couldn't
No.
be families, no children.
So because of what, so it's not just according to fair housing, then it's according to
No,
fair housing?
under 55 and older, fair housing designation, you don't have to allow children.
Okay.
So I can say.
So
no-
over 18?
Over 18.
So over
Or I
18.
could say, I don't have to let anyone in that's under 55 if I so choose. That's my choice.
Okay, and so do you have an age that you're going to limit? Because you could have 20% of it with
Well, no, I
young adults and teenagers in it.
couldn't have I'm not going to have teenagers. I'm not going to have
Well,
school-age children.
according to fair housing, you can. Are you going to?
I can if I want to. I will not have any school-age children in this
All right.
property.
Okay, and so did you identify the need? Do you know how many senior apartments there are do we have no apartments in
I am not aware of
Abington?
any independent senior apartments. I know that Rydell Park has senior apartments, but they have, services and everything else. I'm not aware in Abington of any any apartment complexes like this.
Okay, and so where did we end up with Baderwood? Is that age restricted?
With what?
Baderwood, with 240 units?
I don't believe that that's
the Baderwood?
approved.
So it's not approved for 240
I don't know.
units?
I don't know.
Or
It's
it's
not-
not approved as age restricted?
It's not my project.
It's not approved and not approved as age restricted.
Yeah, it's not approved as either.
It's pending. It's a pending case before the zoning hearing board.
Okay, so it's still in court, right, at this point?
Before the zoning hearing.
Okay. All right, but everything that we had done up till then was 240 some units, and then we have 100 at Rydell, then we have this 200 units, and then we have Noble Station, which also previously was talked about with retail on the bottom, and how many apartments up above?
Nothing, because it's owned by, nothing's going on there.
Well, nothing's
So-
going on there now, but we've already had a plan drawn in that area. And paid for by all these folks. Okay, we've already had plans drawn, and it has been talked about. It is unlikely that will not go forward, okay? At some point.
I can tell you,
Not this year.
it's incredibly likely that that will not go forward anytime soon, because I know the owner and I know what their plans are.
Okay, and one of the other properties that fits into that, into the circle and into this development here is your Abington Shopping Center, right? If you did so choose to put 5 stories.
I'm not sure. I haven't measured it. I don't know if we're within 2,000 feet, and I have no intention of
You
changing
are.
the zoning.
I did, and you are.
Well, I have no intention of changing the zoning on the Abington Shopping Center. I have redeveloped it as a shopping center. I'm re-tenanting as a shopping center. I have long-term leases, and I can't do that.
Okay.
I can tell you right now that Michael's has another 9 years on the lease, and they have 2 5-year options. Rite Aid has lots of options on their lease. I have no intention of redeveloping that.
Okay, and the firewalls that were an issue in the township, we had a lot of commissioners that were not pushing to get what the fire marshal wanted, which was our 70-year, I think, ordinance that we had that allowed for the firewall units in between each unit, and the new regulations didn't require that. Were you one of the ones that was pushing for that or not pushing for that?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, you don't know what I'm talking about?
No, there was commissioners pushing for firewalls or no firewalls.
So there was
I know nothing
Well,
about.
let me
I
explain.
did not push for firewalls or
Well,
no
this is,
firewalls.
I mean, this is a big issue because it actually was our fire marshal saying that if you don't allow us.
All I can tell you is we haven't designed the building yet. When we design the building, it will comply with code.
Okay, and that's the problem, because the code in this township is going to be that licensed labor and industry was in charge of whether or not that code was applied and could be continued. But because
I have no control
because
of
the
it.
solicitor said
If you
there was a
could, if you
new
could please
code.
address things that we
Let me
presented.
just- let me
No,
just
no,
explain
and just
it.
ask you, I know, please, just address what we presented. If you have issues with anything we
Well, this is-
presented, I'm willing to address it, but I didn't present anything on the design as far as firewalls.
This was a
So we will-
question that was asked
We will
of you.
comply with code, and that was my answer.
And that answer is inadequate if people don't
Well,
understand.
I'm sorry, that's the answer we gave. We're going to comply with code.
All right, then I'll just explain that
I
it's up
don't
to
need an
Abington
explanation.
Township
We
to
will build
decide
to
whether
care.
they will pursue having the more intense regulations for the firewalls or the less intense
That's up to them. It's
regulation.
not, I'm not part of Abington, I'm not part of the government
My memory has
here.
you not on the side of pushing for the stronger regulations, which Ken Clark said would protect his firefighters and the residents in this township.
Well,
I
you
would
know,
like to
and
see-
all I can tell you is, I'm not a public official. If you're going to continue to say your memory is something and you can't substantiate it, you're
It's on-
you're
it's on-
making.
I
you're-
will
you're
go back
making-
and look. I'll
Well,
go back and look.
I'd like you to. I'd
I
like you to
will.
go back and look.
Do you recall?
Because
You don't recall it?
I don't
at all?
recall ever commenting on that. I don't recall ever
You might
commenting on
not even
that.
have been there.
So.
I'm just saying.
Mrs. Lehman,
I know,
really,
I know who the
this
ones
is-
were who
there's
pushed
no
for
time
it.
limits here, and it's not our meeting, but really,
Okay.
you're kind of dissuade, your people are leaving
All
because
right.
you're going
All
on
right,
and
let
off
me
and
just-
stuff,
let
and
me
there's
just-
somebody waiting, so, I
Right.
mean,
Let
maybe
me
you could
just
take it
say,
up with them privately.
again, that one of the things, and so this is, there are obviously some people in this room that think that the age-restricted senior development would not be bad. The problem is, if you pass this zoning and you actually put this in place for other areas where all of the people have not had a chance to weigh in. And when people weigh in, if the overwhelming number
So now I
is-
have to jump in on that too, because this is that you keep repeating that misstatement. If there was another place that this applies to, the property owners within that distance will get notice of that in accordance with law. So this could never go to another parcel and affect that without the surrounding property owners
So if
getting
there's not
notice.
another place, then it's spot zoning, right?
But there
If there's
isn't.
not another
I didn't
place,
say
it's
that.
spot zoning.
It was stated several times that the other potentially affected area is the Meadowbrook Apartments. And this is, again, I say if we got to the point where a public hearing were even advertised for this proposed zoning text amendment, automatically, the people in, I don't know the radius off the top of my head, but people within the radius of that potential other place that could be affected would automatically be notified of the proposed zoning text amendment and the public hearing. Not in the future, so not in some hypothetical future after it were hypothetically adopted,
They're
but
not here now.
before the public hearing would even begin.
Okay, but they're not here now.
It's not adopted. It's not before us.
This is about this
It
development
is actually
and its
happening. This is-
immediate
no,
neighbors.
But this is the amount of time it takes people to get up to speed on these issues. When you just have a planning commission meeting and they can ask questions in the back, that's not their time. All right, so that's, I'll just say, in the future, please don't move it forward to planning commission and to any other necessary meetings, which is the beginning of their process, until you've allowed the residents to feel secure that they have everything that they need. Thank you.
Hello.
That's what we're doing.
My name is Emily Shotwell. I live on 1062 Huntington Road. This is going to impact me and my family, my coming family, very soon. Trying not to be emotional. I would like to invite the commissioners to come to my driveway and just see how far away 25 feet is from my property. And imagine if this was your house for your families. I'd invite you not to build, please do not change the zoning to make it more than what it is allowed to be right now. Please do not build 65 feet above on top of my property. And please consider, I just moved here. I haven't even lived here for a year in this house. And I wanted this to be my forever home. Just imagine what it would be like for you to do that. And you probably think I'm a very emotional
No,
person.
I
but it
completely
is.
understand where you're coming from, and
But
I
I'd like
understand.
you to come over
Yeah.
too.
I will, and I'll come
Way
over.
too close for
Yeah.
all of us that live here.
Okay.
And I'd like you to consider moving that.
I will call you and make an appointment to come and look at how it's going to affect you.
I'd like you to consider moving that plan somewhere else, proposing a different plan for that area. It's way too big for this area.
Okay.
I haven't lived here for a year.
Right.
And I already see the problems that are going on in this town.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Karen McNair. I just wanted to thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it. It's not part of the normal process, so I really appreciate you being here, as well as the commissioners and your township manager for taking time tonight. I think you just answered this question, but the ordinance hasn't been advertised yet at all, right? Okay. And then have you talked to PennDOT at all yet, had a scoping meeting or anything with them? Okay. I am concerned with there being two accesses on both the roads. I mean, I think the current AO ordinance now only permits one access point per street, so that would be something that is not addressed in your ordinance right now. And then I see you use the 9th edition of the IT, and I think in September they came out with the 10th edition. Do you know if anything's changed with that use in terms of the parking calculations?
We will check.
Okay. PennDOT will make you change it anyway, so.
Traffic
I was just
engineer?
wondering.
Are you a traffic engineer?
No.
An engineer?
Yes.
Ah.
I did want to ask you some questions related to the ordinance as well. Can you please confirm the minimum tract area? I think you were saying 5, the ordinance says 4. Is yours just proposed at 5 acres?
Well, we're looking either the net or the gross. I guess that was, the ordinance says 4.
Right, we have 5.
0.07,
It's like
yeah.
4 point something net.
Yeah.
If you are not proposing any accessory uses, would you agree to remove that from the ordinance? Because that was
Yes.
one of my concerns.
Yes.
Okay. Another concern I had was there's no design criteria proposed. The AO ordinance does include design of buildings located on Easton Road, but there's nothing currently for Old York Road or Susquehanna. I do see that you have some variation in your building, which is great. That's usually what ordinance require. So if you could just document what's being provided or talk with the township staff about what they'd like to see, I think that would be important for anywhere else the development might be proposed.
So either design criteria or negative declaration will
I would
address, we
prefer
address it that
design
way.
criteria because then it applies to any spot
Okay,
where the
we can
ordinance
talk
would
about
apply.
that, absolutely.
And then you said you were proposing the common areas with kitchens. Can they be rented out, or is that specifically just for the residents?
To residents, that's all,
Okay.
not to third parties.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just asked about Sunrise, where are they with all this? There's no representative here from them?
I don't know.
What's their position? They don't care?
Yeah.
Can I speak now?
Yes, sir.
I'm Gary Koch. I'm a resident of Abington, and I'm also the property manager of Abington Presbyterian Church, right across the street from the site. And we have responsibility for maintaining the cemetery. And I agree with the lady that said that probably putting a cemetery next to under or over 55 might not be a good idea, but I know what you're up against. We've worked with the Y for many, many years to help maintain the wall around the cemetery. And on your map, you've eliminated the South Road, the road that's just immediately south of the cemetery. It's a green space, it looks like. It looks like green on the map.
Correct.
So I was hoping that you might keep that open so we can have access to the wall all the way around. We do have responsibility for maintaining that. We use vehicles in there to maintain the stones, and we have another access for the lawn mowing, things like that. Also, I would encourage you to work with the church and the cemetery group to help maintain it, and it is a historical cemetery. And it has a lot to offer to the Abington community because there are a lot of people from Abington that are buried there.
Right.
And it would be great if you made a commitment to supporting what we do with that cemetery. It'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about that and see what, what it's.
Good.
what
Thank
it-
you.
So, thank you.
So maybe we're ending on this note, but my name is Heidi. I live behind the Y off of Huntington Road. And I just want to reiterate what Amanda says, that your vet has a great reputation and high standards, and most of us welcome a senior living center. I think when the word high density came across through the content that we were reading, we started doing a lot of research on high density buildings. And we just want more time to look at the impact that these high density buildings have on communities. So we were looking at research studies, we were looking at architectural digests. Because our impression, I think, of this building is that it is an urban building being placed in a suburban area. And so we really want to see a more suburban design come into that spot. And we hope that you can do it.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. We obviously have, I would say there's probably 20 solid things that we have to go back to the drawing board and deal with. And I appreciate everybody's input, and we're going to work on it and get back to you. And, thank you very much.
So are we going to have a subsequent meeting?
Yes.
On that
It's-
February date?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure if everybody heard that, but then
Before everybody leaves, this is just so you hear the date of the follow-up meeting?
February 12th at 7 p.m., same place here. And we'll have some more chairs for everyone.
Thank you. You made some good points.